Hi, everybody. I am Nevada Attorney General Aaron Ford, and I am back with another episode of the State of Justice podcast. So today I'm going to be talking to our Bureau of Consumer Protection Chief, Ernest Figueroa, who is also our consumer advocate, along with the regulatory manager, David Chairez, and we're going to be discussing rising energy costs. As the Attorney General, it's my job to ensure Nevadans are protected from price gouging. I know working families have budgets that are stretched very thin right now. Your pennies are valuable, and I will not allow your hard-earned income to be exploited. So how do we in the AG's office protect people? One way is through my Bureau of Consumer Protection, who, as again, a part of their work, advocates for fair energy prices. At the top of our mind are hardworking Nevadans and the impact that rate hikes have on their lives. But before I get to rate hikes, I want to tell you a little bit about some of the work that my office has been up to. And the work that my colleagues and I do is often mentioned in the press, and so I wanted to kind of go over a few of those things with you. I'm sure you've heard, for example, about the lawsuit that we recently filed against social media companies TikTok, Snapchat, and some meta platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and Messenger. Here's what I can say. We decided to file our cases in Nevada instead of joining other states in a federal case, just like we did with the state's opioid cases. We felt that this was the best course of action for Nevada and for Nevadans. Our judgment proved correct in the opioids litigation, and I'm certain it's going to prove correct in this particular circumstance as well. This is such a huge case that the manpower and the resources we have at our disposal at the AG's office wouldn't be enough, and so we were able to work with the governor's office and our legislature to enable us to contract with some outside counsel to help us with the case while we continue to do the work that we do to serve all of our state's constituents. I'm sure you've also heard about a case that the people refer to as the fake electors case. It's ongoing, and as you probably know, I can't speak a lot about the specifics, but here's what I can tell you. The accused want to move the case out of Las Vegas, and so they filed a motion to do that. Last week, my office filed our papers to keep the case right here in Clark County. There's going to be, there was just earlier this week, another filing that the defendants put in this case, and there's going to be a hearing on March the 4th, I believe it is, that's going to where the judge is going to entertain all of these motions and make a decision soon after that. But let me be clear, these types of proceedings aren't out of the ordinary. Leading up to trial, there's almost certainly going to be motions that are filed back and forth from our attorneys and for the attorneys with on the other side of the V, so to speak. And so we're used to this. And I trust our judicial system and its process to see that justice is going to be served. And so stay tuned in that for that. You've also heard about another opioid settlement. I suspect that we were able to procure. We got $4 million more in opioid settlement funds coming into the state, and that's in addition to the already $1.1 billion that we've brought in. And we're proud of that work. This particular settlement isn't with a drug maker or a pharmaceutical company, but it's with a marketing firm that the pharmaceutical companies were using to persuade doctors to prescribe opioids to their patients. And it's my intention, as I've always said, to hold accountable at every level anybody that's responsible for the opioid crisis here in our state. Speaking of that crisis, I serve as chair of the Substance Use Response Working Group. We call it the SURGE Group for short. And that, as you might imagine, talks about substance use and abuse issues. And we just released our 2023 annual report, in which we made some very specific recommendations on how to combat the substance use crisis in our state. Among those recommendations is a proposal to double the funds that have been invested in the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Agency to a total of $24 million this biennium. We think that'd be very helpful and go a very long way at helping us combat substance use issues in our state, and we're very proud of that report. Okay, we're going to move on now to our interview session. As you all know, I have with me my consumer advocate Ernest Figueroa and a good buddy of ours, regulatory manager David Chairez in the building with us. And as I said, Ernest is our consumer advocate. Ernest, you've been consumer advocate for a number of years now. Why don't you tell our audience what is a consumer advocate?
Well, in this particular case, the consumer advocate for the state of Nevada is the executive head of the Bureau of Consumer Protection. Our duty in the Bureau of Consumer Protection is twofold. One is to advocate for low-cost rates on behalf of the public interest and residential ratepayers in Nevada, and to also enforce the Nevada Deceptive Trade Practice Statute, Unfair Trade Practice Statute, and various other consumer protection laws. Just as a bit of history, the office was created in 1983 as a result of large rate increases that were being imposed on the public. At that time, it was just solely the consumer advocate whose job was to fight for the ratepayer before at that time Public Service Commission of Nevada. The office was expanded in 1997 to include the enforcement of the deceptive trade practices and unfair trade practice statutes.
Yeah, so you said it was used to be called something different, but now it's called the Public Utility Commission. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you practice before the Public Utility Commission. Well, who are they? What do they do, and what's our connection to them?
The Public Utilities Commission, formerly known as Public Service Commission, is a three-member commission. They are appointed by the governor for 4-year terms, staggered. Their duty is to regulate the public utilities that are present in Nevada, basically the private and investor-owned utilities. Now, what does that mean? I say public utilities, you think of all the utilities. In southern Nevada, it's going to be Nevada Power and Southwest Gas. In northern Nevada, it's going to be Sierra Pacific Power and Southwest Gas. Now, before I jump in, you say, I remember those names, but I don't hear them anymore. That's because both Sierra Pacific Power and Nevada Power both do business as Nevada Energy, but their regulated license is by their official names, Sierra Pacific Power and Nevada Power.
Now, I was at an event on Saturday, and 3 elderly African-American women walked up to me and they said, I got to ask you a question. And I said, well, what did I do, ma'am? And she said, well, you didn't do anything, but I want to know, can you tell me what's going on with these rate increases that we're seeing on our bills? And I said, well, I actually have the right person for you to call. Call Ernest and ask him. So Ernest, can you answer that? What's going on with these rate increases? Can you explain that?
This is a very complicated question, and one of the things I want to preface this answer on is it's very difficult to talk to the general public about rates. It's very complicated. It's very convoluted. When rate bills get presented at the legislature, they give the incoming lawmakers 50 definitions. I'm going to try to explain this in the best way I can, but at the same time, there's going to be, I know, people in the industry who's going to listen to this podcast and say, wait a minute, this is not correct, and he left this out, and he left this out. It's not meant to be a treatise on utility regulation, but it is if I'm talking to my mom or dad or brother or sister.
Oh, those 3 elderly women who asked me about it on Saturday.
So the recent rate increases that has been hitting the news, and it's the reason it's been hitting the news is because we have noticed that for the most significant increase to bills have been to the natural gas utilities. Our data shows that specifically in the Reno area, they've had hit with a 50% increase over the last 2 years. In northern Nevada, in the Carson City area, 70% over the last 2 years. And that's just for the natural gas. On the electric side, while not an apples-to-apples comparison, the data that I shows during the month of during the years from 20 to 21 to 2023, in northern Nevada, the electric utilities had a 50.2% increase, and the southern Nevada utilities had a 54% increase. Now, the cause.
Yeah, what causes that, right?
Yeah, the cause, I guess we could talk your ears off with all sorts of data and whatnot, but let me just try to break it down. Here's the facts as I know it. In the winter of 2022 and 2023, the wholesale cost of natural gas in the West went through the roof. Why? 3 basic reasons. First, we had a colder than normal winter. Second, there was a decrease in wholesale gas storage. And third, there was an outage of a pipeline that transports natural gas from Texas to the west.
I think I remember reading about that in the headlines.
Yes. So what we had was a storm of things that basically caused a sudden increase in demand for natural gas and a sudden decrease in the supply of natural gas. And as basic economics will tell you, when that happens, prices inevitably will increase. So, how does this affect Nevada? Why did this cause such a problem here in the state? Well, before I jump into that, there's 3 filings that happen at the Public Utilities Commission that can affect a person's rate. The first one is what's called the quarterly filing. As a quarter, it happens every couple of months. Not couple of months, every quarter.
Every quarter, right?
The second is an annual filing. And the third filing...
That's once a year, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And the third is what's known as the general rate case. Now, the quarterly filing is what's causing all this commotion. The quarterly filing let me just give you some past Nevada history. The quarterly filing was created by the Nevada legislature during the last energy crisis. And I'm taking you all the way back.
Is that to Enron?
Yes,
to Enron. Yeah.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It was created to allow rates to have what's known as rate stability instead of swinging and having large rate increases, large rate decreases, large rate increases happening back to back to back in weeks and months or whatever. The quarterly filings that were created base costs on a rolling 12-month average with rate caps. Now bear in mind that this also it captures both rate increases and rate decreases. The filing of itself represents the purchase power fuel for the utilities to run their generators and for the natural gas utilities for resale to the ratepayer. These costs are passed on to the customer without any profit to the utility. The reason why this is causing a problem for our ratepayers is because we are working through the reimbursements for the last year on these high wholesale prices.
Oh, I see. It sounds like a very confusing and technical scenario that you have to deal with on a daily basis, and so I can understand why people are coming up to me asking me questions, because it's just a confusing issue all the way around.
Yeah, it very is, but one thing I want to mention before I jump into what annual filings are is the good news is that this winter the Western wholesale market did not experience the same big 3 issues at the same time.
That's great.
So quarterly fuel and purchase power rates should be trending down in the near future.
Well, speaking of trending down, let me ask you this. Have there ever been cases of rate decreases or any credits to ratepayers?
That's a good question. Let me just segue back to the quarterly filings. Eventually there's going to come a time when there's a decrease in the price of purchase power. That will result in a rate decrease.
Okay.
Eventually. One of the other cases I mentioned is the general rate case. The general rate case will usually result in a rate increase. Lots of reasons why. There's a lot of technical reasons, but it usually results because of one of the following. There's an increase in operations and maintenance, or there's an increase in labor, or there's an increase in cost of investments, or there's an increase of the cost of debt or equity to finance for the company. So one of these drivers is what causes a general rate case. Fortunately, by PUC regulation, when and if a company decides to file a general rate case, they are required to show not only the increases, but they're also required to show the decreases to O&M and labor and cost of investments. And this allows us, the BCP, to fight for the ratepayer and say, hey, you're having an increase in cost of debt or equity? Well, we disagree with you. It should be lower. You're having an increase in labor? We disagree with you. It should be lower.
Got it.
There's a lot of reasons why. And we have a team of people. We have experts such as David, economists, and other financial experts to assist us looking at the filings to argue for every single way we could make that general rate case lower than what the company is asking for.
Yeah.
Now, to answer your question, we had a big win in 2020.
Y'all hear that? We had a big win in 2020.
There was a Nevada Power general rate case. For whatever reason, the company decided to file. And as I recall, it resulted in a $93 million rate decrease and a $120 million credit. It wasn't just the result of the BCP, but it was a lot of work with the BCP and other people that participated in the rate case. But I'm pretty sure Mr. Chairez can provide more specifics.
Tell us about that, David.
Well, that was the Nevada Power's 2020 general rate case, and at the time the utility, the investments that we had made in the early 2000s, a lot of them had been depreciated, kind of like your house payment. So in your house payment, as you when you're halfway through your house payment, the mortgage, the amount that goes to the principal is more than the interest, and that's the same principle that applies in utility rates. Mm-hmm. And so what had happened is a lot of these power plants that we had built after the Enron Western energy crisis were more depreciated, and so the amount that needed to be returned for investment had gone down, and so that allowed for us to decrease rates. And at the same time, there was an opportunity to get a bill credit, and we were able to get a one-time bill credit of $120 million in a general rate case. So, as Chief Deputy Figueroa explained, that doesn't happen very often in a general rate case. But the good news on fuel and purchase power cost, the last two quarterly filings that the utilities have made have been for decreases, and we today. The electric utilities will be filing their quarterly filing for April, and we expect a decrease then, and then we expect a significant decrease in July when air conditioning use is maximum, so that will be beneficial to the consumers.
Well, that to me sounds like light at the end of the tunnel. That's what it sounds like to me. And my consumer advocate is a consumer advocate. That's your job, and that's what you do. You advocate on behalf of the consumers, and thank you all for your work on that. Before we tune off, though, I want to ask, in the event, just like the young ladies came up to me on Saturday and asking questions, what recourse do ratepayers have when they have questions or concerns or complaints about what's going on out there?
I'll answer that several different ways. When I hear that question, there's a lot of issues that come to my mind. So let me just break it down. The first issue is, I'm having a problem with my utility. Who do I call? Yeah. And by problems, I'm like, my meter's not working, electricity's cut off. Who do I make my payment to? The Public Utilities Commission of Nevada has a consumer outreach division that works with ratepayers to assist them in interfacing with their utility. They handle all those types of issues. Problems with my meter, problems with my company and the bill, my bill's not right. They're the right place to go. Okay, so there's that. Second, I view that question as, you know what? I don't like all these rate increases. I don't know what the hell's going what in the world is going on? I want to talk to somebody about it. Well, as I said before, the Public Utilities Commission have 3 appointed members, and they're appointed by the governor. If you feel that you want to make your voice heard on the political level, you could always reach out to the governor's office. Second, there's every time a utility files a rate change for a rate increase, by law, the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada, is required to hold a consumer session. That notice is provided in either the bill insert or an email. This is an opportunity for the average ratepayer to voice their concerns to the 3 human beings who are the commissioners and say, hey, these rate increases are impacting my ability to pay my food, pay my rent, pay for my medicine. Please do what you can to make sure that rate increases are not happening unnecessarily and unjustly, and do everything that you can in your power so that we have just and reasonable rates. So it's very important that the public participate in these consumer sessions, because I am able to use them in my legal arguments whenever I advocate for lower rates. I did that recently in a couple of cases, and I look forward to people utilizing their voice and making their voice heard at these consumer sessions.
Yeah.
And finally, to the extent that there's news articles about legislation that is affecting utility rates, the legislature provides opportunity and notice to participate in the legislative process, as well as you could always contact your own particular representative to voice your concerns.
Yeah. Are there assistance programs out there that people can rely upon when they do fall on hard times?
The Public Utilities Commission of Nevada has a website and a link that lists all the available programs for assistance on allowing people on energy assistance programs. It provides links to the utilities. There's certain things that you could do at the utility level to avoid surprised bills. But there's also other programs available, like those run by the, I think, Housing Division and Welfare Division.
Okay.
And the links are at the Public Utilities Commission website, that people can see if they avail themselves to have a rate assistance.
Thank you for mentioning those links. We're going to include those links in the description of the podcast, so y'all be on the lookout for that. Well, listen, you are our consumer advocate. We appreciate the work that you do, you and the entire team. David, thank y'all so much for what you do over there. And I want to thank you again for joining us for this podcast. And now it's time for the publicly speaking segment, where I share some of the messages that our office receives from the public. In connection to the social media lawsuit, we received this following email. And it says, "Dear Attorney General Ford, as a 19-year-old who can't put his phone down and who sees the same in every teenager today, I'm glad someone's doing something to combat the predatory consumer tactics of social media companies. I support you fully and hope something good comes of it." That was so touching, and I really appreciate this email, and so does my office staff, because we know that we're fighting for the public good with each and every lawsuit that we bring. Sometimes it takes a while to get to a resolution, but as I always say, our job is justice, and we'll continue until justice is served. Well, that's all for episode 2 of the State of Justice podcast. My team is working on getting the podcast up on other platforms so that you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. In the meantime, be sure to like, to share, and even leave your comments on this episode. And I'll be back very soon with episode 3. Thanks so much for listening. Bye, everybody. This podcast was created for educational and informational purposes only. The thoughts and commentary expressed in this podcast are provided as a service to the community and do not constitute solicitation or provision of legal advice. This podcast is not designed to provide specific legal advice and should not be used as a substitute for competent legal advice from a licensed professional attorney. The use of any podcast material does not create an attorney-client relationship with the Nevada Attorney General or any attorneys employed by the Office of Attorney General or podcast guests. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by the Nevada Attorney General. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on this program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent by the Nevada Attorney General or the state of Nevada.